James Sherk. We always turn to Heritage for the experts. He's a senior policy analyst in labor economics for Heritage. James, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How you doing this morning?
It's a beautiful day to be alive.
I think almost any day would cover that. Well, I suppose there's some days that are better than others. Hey, looking at your piece in the Daily Signal, I think you open this piece with just a great line saying, President Obama just urged Congress to cut workers' wages. Now, the news headlines didn't report it as such, but make no mistake, that's what he did.
That's exactly right, and he did it again in the state. I mean, he did it in the same breath. I mean, in one paragraph in his speech, he was talking about how workers' wages need to rise, which I think we all agree on, and then he turned around and called on Congress to require businesses to provide paid sick leave. Well, where does the cost of that come from?
Out of your pocket.
Wages. Exactly. I mean, there is no such thing as a free lunch, and there's no such thing as a free paid day off. Somebody's paying for it. And what economists have consistently found is the person who pays for it is the worker. Yes, the company gives you the paid sick day, and look, that's a benefit many Americans cherish and value, and over 90% of companies offer paid sick leave days. But the person who pays for that is the worker, and they pay for it in lower wages the rest of the days when they are at work.
And you mentioned, James, I don't know what the percentage, I think you just mentioned, of companies that already do offer this, but the president wants it to be federally mandated. That's the change he wants, right?
That's exactly right. And look, again, 91% of businesses offer their full-time employees paid sick days. So this is a benefit that most Americans want and receive. But there's a number of people, particularly those with tight budgets, who need, rather than having the days off, they need the higher wages. We shouldn't have the government require them to take more time off and accept less wages. It's a choice that works for many people, but not for everyone.
And as you point out in your piece, businesses care about the total compensation they pay people. They don't care, split it between wages and benefits and all that. But, the overall picture, they're keeping a pretty close eye on that.
No, that's exactly right. And this is what Jonathan Gruber, the Obamacare architect, who President Obama used to boast of his relationship with and how brilliant he was, until he was caught on tape. He was saying how stupid he thought Americans were and how he thought this would help them pass, or he did help them pass Obamacare. But Jonathan Gruber, ironically, has done some of the best research on this. And he's found that when Congress requires companies to provide benefits, they provide it. And almost one for one take that cost out of the workers' wages. They care about the total cost of hiring a worker, not the division between cash wages and non-cash benefits.
James Sherk is with us from the Heritage Foundation, heritage.org. You can also find his work at the Daily Signal, too. The other portion that the president mentioned last night, and we might find out more in perhaps just a couple of weeks or so, is this expansion of who qualifies for overtime pay. And much like the sick leave, the first reaction for some would be, yay, overtime pay for me. But businesses will react, they will adjust, they will change. This could be very bad news for millions, literally millions of people.
Well, I think what this is, the major effect of this is going to be to effectively convert a large number of salaried workers into hourly employees. Mm-hmm. So every American who's paid on an hourly basis automatically qualifies for overtime under the law. What the president is proposing doing is basically requiring large numbers of salaried workers to also qualify for overtime. We'll have to see what they say, but potentially anyone earning between, it could be 40,000, it could be up to 70,000. Is what some of the liberal groups are arguing for. But anyone earning less than that threshold would have to log their hours and would get paid overtime. Now, at first you say, okay, that's higher wages. Everyone likes overtime, yay. But the problem is, and what even economists close to the administration find, is that again, how do employers pay for it? They take the cost out of employees' base wages. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, your total weekly wages isn't going to change. You get whatever overtime hours you would have get, and they pay that time and a half, and they cut your base wage so that at the end you're making the same as you did before. I mean, Jared Bernstein, the chief economist for Vice President Biden, wrote a paper last year where he was talking about how exactly this would happen, that employers simply offset the overtime costs with lower base wages. The workers don't see any difference in their ultimate wage. I mean, even liberal economists see that this is exactly what's going to happen.
So I guess the question then would be, why would you go ahead and shove this through when you've got people who are even on your side of the aisle who supposedly are, on your team saying, this is a really bad idea?
Well, Bernstein supports the expansion. He just recognizes it's not going to do what Obama said last night. It's not going to raise people's wages. He sees it basically as a matter of fairness. But I see it actually a bit differently, because what happens if you're a salaried employee and you're now qualified for overtime? You have to log all of your hours,
Right.
which makes flexible schedules a lot more difficult. I mean, something that a lot of salaried employees like the ability to do is, all right, say you've got a child who's sick, or say you want to go to your child's play, or whatever else it is, you need a flexible schedule. You can take those hours off, and you go do whatever, and then you catch up on the work later in the evening or on the weekend or some other time, because the business is paying you to get a job done, not for the particular hours you've logged. All of a sudden, you're going to have to log all of those hours. And the businesses are going to become really skittish about things like working remotely and telecommuting, because this is the huge new growth industry for the trial lawyers. They're literally filing thousands and thousands of these lawsuits every year, alleging the businesses haven't properly tracked workers' hours and paid them the appropriate overtime under the law. And so the businesses are just going to crack down and say, nope, you can't work remotely. Nope, you've got to be here from 9 to 6, and those are your work hours, and can't work outside of that, and you've got to be there for those particular hours. It's going to take away flexible schedules from millions of Americans.
Or even James Sherk with us, Heritage Foundation, heritage.org, Ronnie and Scott on WROK. Teachers, if they qualify, if that limit is raised to $50,000 a year or $70,000 a year, how many teachers take papers with them home to grade, or grading homework at home? That would have to cease, because schools would have no idea how much time a teacher would spend at home grading papers and when they would cross that overtime threshold.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of businesses like that. I mean, you think about someone who checks their BlackBerry or their iPhone email just to see if they've got anything urgent that's come up. Well, you'd have to log that. And I mean, there have been lawsuits over this from workers who qualify for overtime, that basically saying, yeah, I was spending 5 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day checking my email. You got to owe me overtime for that. And so businesses are becoming very skittish about allowing anyone who qualifies for overtime that degree of flexibility. So you take a few minutes, leave a bit earlier, in the afternoon, but then, you catch it up late at night. That's not going to be happening if you're eligible for overtime.
So you're looking at an accounting and time clock nightmare for a lot of people.
That's exactly right. Now, and again, for many workers, if you're you say you work at a retail store or something like that, look, it's very clear when you're on the clock, when you're not on the clock. When you're at the business, you're doing work. When you're not at the business, you're not. And for hourly workers, this really isn't much of an issue. But for so many salaried workers, and particularly information economy workers, where you can just pull up your laptop and do work remotely, being forced to say, all right, you've got to clock in, you've got to clock out, you can't do work from home, that's really going to make life a lot harder for them.
James, when do we find out what the Department of Labor will say, what that threshold will be, what they want it to be, and then what's the process for it to become an actual regulation?
Well, they are going to release these proposed regulations in February, and so we're going to find out for sure what they're proposing, and then there's a process of rulemaking or of comment where the public basically gets to call in or write in and say, well, I like this, or this is going to make my life a nightmare. Please don't take away my flexibility. And so there's going to be a process where the Department of Labor has to listen to all these comments and take them into account. At the end of the day, they can do what they want, but they have to show that they've taken account and they've listened to the feedback coming from citizens. So we should get this proposed rule sometime in February, and we'll get a clear idea of what the administration is looking at. And then after they hear all the feedback from the citizens, that's when we get a final rule.
He's James Sherk, Senior Policy Analyst in Labor Economics for the Heritage Foundation. Get over there and read his work. You will learn a whole bunch of things. James, thanks for taking time for us this morning.
Thank you.